happiness because he's happy, simply absorbed in serving the Lord. Bhakti is the key. That's the goal. The goal of bhakti is ultimately there. But the key is, just like if you serve the Lord, then you can get different levels of service. Just like in this material world, government might be government agent somewhere in some institution, and then you can get more and more closer to the government, maybe a minister, cabinet, senator, secretary, a vice president. In other words, the intimacy of the service is also on different levels. So when we serve the Lord, we are actually moving closer to become part of His eternal entourage, eternal solutions. You might start off in a lesser position, but still, that position where we continue with the neophyte will become eternal neophyte.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, we accept our own obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome to this morning Srimad Bhagavatam class. It's from Canto 2, which is the Cosmic Manifestation, that's the title. Chapter 2, The Lord in the Heart, and this morning we're doing text 34. So without further ado, I'll start the class. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jayaratha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayaratha Madhava Kunja Vihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradari Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Yashodanandana Vrajanaranjana Jamunatira Vanachari Jamunatira Vanachari Jayaratha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayaratha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayaratha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jayam Vishnupad Brahmansa Privajikacharya Stotra Satsasi Marzavangais A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Netilila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramhansa Privajikacharya Astotra Satsasi Marzavangais Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Koti Vaishnavind Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Charya Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Prem Shri Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyam Kund Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Navadvip Dham Ki Jai, Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamuna Mai Ki Jai, Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Hare Krishna Mamata Ki Jai, Samavita Vastavinda Ki Jai. Jai Gaura Premanandi, Hari 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 Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga Vaishnava. Narayana namaskritya narom chaivam narottamam devim saraswati vyasam tato jayam gujirayat nasya prayesu abhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhavatu tamasloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Hare Krishna. So, Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 2, Text 34. Bhagavan Brahma Kasneya Tvir Anviksha Natmanishaya Tad Adhyavasyat Kutasto Ratir Atman Yato Bhavet Bhagavan Brahma Katsneya Triambiksha Manishaya Tad Adhyavasyat Kutasto Ratir Atman Yato Bhavet Bhagavan Brahma Katsneya Triambiksha Manishaya Tad Adhyavashat Krustasto Gati Atman Yato Bhavet. Hare Krishna. Anyone who wants to chant can do that. Unmute yourself. All right, we'll do word for word. Bhagavan, the great personality Brahma. Brahma, the Vedas. Kasneya, by summarization. Three times. Ambiksha, scrutinizingly examined. Manishaya, with scholarly attention. Tat, that. Adhyavyasat, ascertained it. Utasta, with concentration of the mind. Rati, attraction. Atman, Atmani, unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. Yata, by which, Bhave, it so happens. Translation by His Divine Grace, Sri Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained the attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. She ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Report by Srila Prabhupada. Sri Shukadeva Goswami is referring to the highest Vedic authority, Lord Brahma, who is a qualitative incarnation of Godhead. The Vedas were taught to Brahmaji in the beginning of the material creation. Although Brahmaji was to hear Vedic instructions directly from the personality of Godhead, in order to satisfy the inquisitiveness of all prospective students of the Vedas, Brahmaji, just like a scholar, studied the Vedas 3 times, as generally done by all scholars. He studied with great attention, concentrating on the purpose of the Vedas. And after scrutinizingly examining the whole process, he ascertained that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. And this conclusion, and this is the last instruction of the Bhagavad Gita, directly presented by the Personality of Godhead. The Vedic conclusion is thus accepted by all acharyas, and those who are against this conclusion are only Veda Vata Ratas, as explained in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, text 42. Oma Ginati Virandasya Gana Ganashalakaya Chakshu Ombilitam Dina Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kalamaya Bhadati Swapadati Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanamani Namaste Krishna Padaya Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavari Paschatya Dishacharini Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Advaita Gadadha Shiva Shari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Ram Hare Hare. The English translation again. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind, studied the Vedas 3 times, and after scrutinizingly examining them, he ascertained that attraction for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, is the highest perfection of religion. Hare Krishna. So, Shukadeva Goswami is not talking about what Lord Brahma did. Brahma is the first jiva in this material universe. There's a Lord Brahma for each universe. And so the Brahma that's our universe, he's got 4 heads, 8 eyes. So for each head is like what's on there is like our head, but he has 4 of them. Looking at all 4 directions, north, south, east, and west, you can at the same time. He is a great personality. Chanamali Swami explained that his body is all intelligence. He is also a co-creator because Mahavishnu is the one through whose force the universe has come, and the next creation of the varieties in the universe, that's from Lord Brahma. Planets and things inside the planets. He also appoints demigods to different posts. So this is all Brahma's role. Now, in studying, Srila Prabhupada said, Brahma studied the Vedas like a typical scholar. He studied it 3 times. The great personality Brahma, with great attention and concentration of the mind. He concentrated, studying the Vedas 3 times. Just like Lord Chaitanya said, Harinam, Harinam, Harinam. The name of Hari. The name of Hari. Harinam, Harinam, Harinam. 3 times when someone says things or does things 3 times is for emphasis. 3 times denotes emphasis. And so Lord Brahma studied the Vedas 3 times. And after scrutinizingly examining them, then he ascertained, which means he became convinced without a doubt, that to be attracted to Sri Krishna is the highest perfection of religion. The gopis of Vrindavan have great, super excellent attraction for Krishna. So the gopis are situated in the highest perfection of religion according to what Brahma is concluding here. We also are trying to get attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead through service, through instructions of how to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mm. So our sadhana bhakti is putting us in the right direction where at some point we will be very attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Brahma said the attraction for him is the highest perfection of religion. So he is the Vedic authority because Lord Krishna spoke the Vedas to Lord Brahma first. And Brahma instructed his son Narada, and Narada was the spiritual master for Vyasadeva, and so the Vedas came down that way. Vyasadeva decided to write, but he actually didn't write it out. He dictated, he spoke it, and Lord Ganesh, the one that has an elephant head, Lord Ganesh's kutir, place of residence, was only like 15 minutes walk away from where Vyasadeva was. And of course, our ears don't work so well now, but demigod's ears are very sharp. And so he could, Lord Ganesh could hear Vyasadeva, even though Vyasadeva was not shouting. He could hear Vyasadeva. And in the meantime, Shukadeva Goswami was in the belly of Vyasadeva's wife, and he was also here. Ganesh was writing. Excuse me. So Lord Ganesh was writing as Vyasadeva was dictating. So this is Lord Ganesh's contribution also. So Brahma studied the Vedas just like Arjuna. The reason was to satisfy people. Brahma, you tell Brahma one thing one time, he would know it. But he still studied it so that prospective students of the Vedas would also study it very scrutinizingly. So he studied 3 times. And just like Arjuna, questions that he asked during the battle of, before the battle of Kurukshetra were not really for him. He is a pure devotee. The questions that he asked and the arguments that he came out with the first time before the, the battle, from which he was concluding that he did not want to fight, were all things that a person who is a materialist would think about. Materialists don't think about the nature of the soul, the fact that we have to satisfy the soul, and we think in terms of that. The materialists think in terms of satisfying the body. And so the relations, the family members are very important to such a person. So Arjuna was playing that role, the people and my family members, why should I kill them? Why should I fight this fight? This war, it's not right. From a material standpoint, he was making all arguments that there were so many men gathered, 640 million of them. And if they get killed, what about those who are husbands? What would their wives do? Some other men might pounce on them, might have children with them, and without the proper observance of regulations, spiritual regulations for having children, we're going to wind up with Varna Shankara. This is in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, text 40. Arjuna making that case. But still, he was playing that role so that those who think that way would get the answers from Krishna. And so Brahmaji was also studying the Vedas, although he knew the Vedas, just like a scholar, so that people will also be motivated to study the Vedas and live according to the spiritual, transcendental aspect of the Vedas. So Srila Prabhupada says he studied with good attention. And he concentrated on the purpose of the Vedas. So, what is the purpose of the Vedas? In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 15, text 15, Krishna himself explains. First, just like this title of this chapter, The Lord in the Heart, he explains that he is situated in the heart. He says, I'm seated in everyone's heart. From me comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. Then the answer to this question, concentrating on the purpose of Vedas that Brahma was doing, Vedasya sarva aham eva vedya. The Vedas is to know him. The Vedas is from him. Vedanta Krit Vedavid Eva Chaham. He is the knower of the Vedas, and he's a compiler of the Vedas. And the purpose of the Vedas is to get to know him, to know Krishna. So when Lord Brahma was looking at the Vedas again, he was concentrating the purpose, how to know Krishna. And it is also the same for us. The purpose of our life is to know Krishna, and just like Brahma read and came to the conclusion that the highest perfection of religion is to be attracted to the Lord. And that shouldn't be too difficult because the name Krishna means all attractive. Therefore, he attracts at all levels. If we turn our attention from him, then Maya puts us in difficulty. Then we go on with a hard struggle for life and we're never really satisfied or happy inside. But when we understand that everything is to know Krishna, to be attracted to Krishna, and therefore serve Krishna's senses, then we just have to lead life that way with that understanding. And automatically, we will in fact be happy. Internal happiness. So he came to the conclusion, without a doubt, that becoming a pure, unalloyed devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. To serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead as an unalloyed devotee. Alloy is usually it is used to describe metals, especially in chemistry. A metal, say iron, pure iron, doesn't have any other element in it. But if there is some carbon, small amount of carbon that's put in, then it's called steel. So steel is an alloy. It becomes an alloy of carbon and iron. The main content, over 90% content is iron, and then small impurity. Okay. So unalloyed means pure, no impurity. So this is for emphasis. He ascertained, Lord Brahma was totally convinced that becoming a pure and an unalloyed is also another meaning for pure. But to stress the point, pure unalloyed devotee of Krishna is the topmost perfection of all religious principles. Actually, to become a pure, unalloyed devotee of Krishna is the way to the greatest happiness that anyone can get. It is not the material wealth that gives happiness. It is, in fact, service. When we pour our hearts to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead and his devotees, that's how we become happy. So the instruction of Bhagavad Gita, that is the last instruction. Krishna says, Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mamekam Sharanam Braja. Abandon all varieties of religion and just surrender to me. Get attracted to me. All your mind, all your thinking, everything about you connected directly or indirectly to Krishna. And that's where we become. Then we become very attracted to Krishna because we're thinking of Krishna all the time. We made our home, we made our workplace, wherever we go, such that we are remembering Krishna one way or the other. then we become attractive. Hmm? Which means when the time comes for us to leave our body, we will remember Krishna because that's all we've been doing to do. The majority of the time in our lives has to be used for Krishna consciousness. Service as well as remembrance. Hmm? Service, actual physical doing things that are part of devotional service, and also remembrance by chanting the holy name of the Lord and remembering the Lord's pastimes and the glories of the Lord. Hmm? Like that. And that way, then we are always connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. And so, even unto death, the mind will still be focused on Krishna. And if the mind is focused on Krishna, the subtle body, its mind, intelligence, and ego, especially the mind, plays a great role. The subtle body carries the soul to its next existence. Therefore, if we are at that point of leaving the body and we're thinking of Krishna, then the picture of the mind is the picture of Krishna. And therefore, when the soul comes out of the body, the subtle body also comes out of the physical body. Now, the soul will be directed to Krishna. And at that time, the Lord Himself will take the subtle body, this material mind, out, separate it. We can't separate, but the Lord can. Lord can separate the subtle body from the soul. The soul expands, the soul takes its original form, which you call Shuddha Swarup. Then we are now in a situation where we can, in fact, relate to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We don't have to worry about things here in the material world. Especially some people think, well, oh, I have to be somehow be able to do, live life well, therefore I have to be wealthy. Those who speak like that or think like that don't have the knowledge of how much wealth there is in the spiritual world. The amount of wealth in the spiritual world is huge. Brihad Bhagavatamrita describes it that every single entity in the spiritual world has access to wealth that is like the wealth in millions of material universes. That much. It doesn't mean that they carry it all the time like we do here, but they have access to it anytime that anyone in the spiritual world wants any kind of wealth, it's there for them. Krishna owns everything. Krishna owns everything in the material world too, but sometimes we think we own some things. We came here without anything as babies. We die and we can't take anything with us, but still we think we own something here. So spiritually, ownership is a misnomer. We don't own anything here. We just think we do. And some things are in our names, but it doesn't mean anything spiritually because when a person dies, what's the use of that thing being in their name anymore? Dead people don't count. So, with that understanding, it makes all the sense in the world to connect to Krishna because that's where the real happiness and the real love will, in fact, manifest. And we'll get to relate to Krishna and to Krishna's devotees. So that's the last instruction. But there are some people, as Srila Prabhupada explains, there are some people who are against the conclusion of the Vedas. And they call Veda Bhatta Ratas. It's talked about in Bhagavad Gita. We'll get to that a little later. But in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 8, text 14, Ananya Cheta Satatam Yo Mam Smarati Nityasa Tasyaham Sulabha Partha Nitya Yuktasya Yogina. Krishna says, the one who remembers me without deviation, for that person, I'm easy to obtain, O Arjun, because of his constant engagement in devotional service. So Krishna is saying that constant engagement in devotional service, when we do that, we will always remember Krishna. Because if we engage constantly in devotional service, constantly, we will remember who we are doing the service for. And therefore, automatically, we will remember Krishna. Again, at the time of death, what is predominant in the person's mind will be what they have been involved with a good bit of the time while they were living their life up to the time they were on their deathbed. What they have spent the most of their time thinking about is what's going to be predominant in the mind at that time. Therefore, when we chant the Hare Krishna mantra and hear pastimes of the Lord, and also preach and get more people involved and do service, physical service in the temple, especially, all of those connected with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, we will remember the Lord. And Krishna says, I'm easy to obtain. And another way to say I'm easy to obtain is it's easy to come to him. Hmm? It's easy to come to him, which means when where's him? If you go to him, that means you go into the spiritual world, especially at this time that by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and the Parampara, that this particular planet, Goloka Vrindavan, is available. Not every time that it's available. So we are fortunate, or anyone who thinks of Krishna and serves Krishna from the bottom of their hearts is a very fortunate person. That is pure devotional service, as is explained in Chaitanya Charitamrita. In Madhya Lila, chapter 19, text 167, Anya Bilashita Sunyam Dhyana Karmadhyana Vitam Anukuliyena Krishna Nu Shilanam Bhakti Uttama. When first class devotional service develops, one has to be devoid of all material desires. Knowledge obtained by monistic philosophy or philanthropic duties, and fruitive action, wanting some pay from it, something from it. So, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Text 6, third line, Ahoitiki apatiyata. There should not be any motivation when we are doing devotion service, when you're serving the Lord, other than we just want to satisfy Krishna's senses. We just want to make devotees happy. We want to satisfy the instructions or obey the instructions of Guru. That's all. We are serving in that sense. And a real servant. And a servant of a servant of a servant is what Srila Prabhupada asks us to be. That way, so this translation, Anyabilas Tesanyam, when the first class devotional service develops, that person must be devoid of all material desires, knowledge from monistic philosophy, fruitive action. The devotee must constantly serve Krishna favorably as Krishna desires. That's the same thing as saying serving Krishna's senses, serving Krishna as he wants you to serve him. So in that way, then we will, in fact, develop the attraction, just like Lord Brahma was describing. So some people, we talked about it, we said we'll talk about that later. Let's talk about it now. And that is the Vedavata Rasa people. Those who are against this conclusion. Who are they? Well, in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, text 42 and 43, Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadantya avipasita. Vedavata Rata Parta Nanyat Astiti Vadina. In text 43, Kamatmana Swagapara Janma Karma Pala Pradam Kriya Vishesha Bahulam Bogaishvara Yatim Pati. The translation is that the men of small knowledge, they are very much attracted to the flowery words of the Vedas, which recommend various fruitive activities to get elevated to heavenly planets or to get good birth and power, etc., etc., etc. And those people being desirous of sense gratification and an opulent life, they say this is it. There's nothing more than this. Hmm? And what does Krishna call them? Men of small knowledge. They're attracted to the flowery words, the poetic words of the Vedas. And part of the Vedas does, in fact, recommend fruitive activities. Hmm? Various fruitive activities. If you want this, you should do that. If you want that, and this is going on. Even the demons know about it. Hmm? The demons of today know about it. Hmm? Because in the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 3, it's all there. Whatever you want, you worship this demigod. You'll get it. You want power, you worship the demons. There are things that you worship, but if you want devotion, you worship the Lord Krishna. And that is the smartest thing to do. So there are some people who are connected or want to connect to the fruitive activities and the pujas for that. And then they get elevated to the heavenly planets, particularly those planets, the heavenly planets that the demigods themselves are at, the particular demigod or demigods that they were doing puja to. Mm? And the life is, from a material standpoint, higher enjoyment, material enjoyment, longer duration of life. That's there, but it's not forever. Nobody stays there forever. Even the demigods have to leave their bodies at some point. Some of them may live billions of years, but they still have to leave their body. And when the person that goes there has to leave, they come back to the earthly planet. And so why spend time going there for just sense gratification, material sense gratification, only to come back here when the life in the spiritual world is the best and it is not temporary. Hmm? It goes on forever. So why spend time there just because you want some material sense gratification of a high caliber compared to the other places in the material universes? So it is a waste of time. You go someplace, and sometimes I saw one time, simple describe something to you. There was an ant, and he was just traveling, going, quite a while. I almost missed because it went quite far. Next thing I know, it turned around and started coming back. No break, no doing anything. And I said, what is the sense of that? It's gone to a certain extent, and then it's turned around, and it's coming back to the same place. Hmm? Generally the same place they started from. That's what it's like. Hmm? Merry-go-round, sometimes it's described. Go up to the heavenly planets, come to the earth planets, go down to lower planets, you act in mode of ignorance, go back up after you get out of these bodies that are not human, into a human body again. And if you go worship some demigod, go up to the heavenly planets, and then go come back down. So you never get out of this place. Hmm? It is described as useless. So sense gratification, material sense gratification, is not something we should be involved in. Just simply chant the holy name, Krishna will take care of us. And everything we do, even material, he'll take care of us. Sometimes there are challenges that come, but we have to remember that the Lord, even during times that are materially we consider tough, the Lord is always with us, always with us. He showed that in the Mahabharata, how he was always with the Pandavas. And the Pandavas' troubles that they went through has been well documented. And you see that at some point the Lord was there to protect them. Or he empowered one or more of them to deal with that situation effectively. So he's always there for us. He's always there for us, and we should never ever forget it, especially at the time when we seem to be troubled. So things come, they go. Happiness comes, distress comes. This is all at the material level. They go. Just like the weather changes. It comes and it goes. But as Lord Brahma is telling us, if we focus on Krishna so that we get very attracted to Krishna and everything about Krishna, so that even in the material world, whatever we see would remind us of Krishna, then that is the highest perfection of religion. So the Vedas sacrifices that are recommended for elevation to the heavenly planets may be interesting for some people, but the devotees should never pay attention to that. Nobody should want to go to heavenly planets to go see life there or try for life over there. I know religionists are talking about going to the heavenly planet, but because they have a forefront of knowledge, they don't know that there's even a whole spiritual sky beyond the material universe. Some of them don't even know that the heavenly planets are higher material planets, but in the material world. Not even that is explained in many of these the religious books. So they are very, 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 compared to the Vedas, there's not much in there for them, especially the Srimad Bhagavatam, which really teaches Vedic wisdom. And that's why we just take one text at a time and scrutinize it and preach about it so that we can get more about Krishna, more understanding about Krishna and about Krishna's pure devotees and what we ourselves have to do in terms of imitating sometimes or taking instructions and other times too. So inexperienced persons that do this type of, it's called a Jyotishoma, sacrifices to go to the heavenly planets. It will become very difficult for them to be determined in Krishna consciousness because Krishna consciousness is not based on wealth, not material wealth, not material wealth. It's based on spiritual wealth. So Srila Prabhupada describes them that they are fools who get attached to the flowers of poisonous trees without knowing the results of such attraction. So in that same way, unenlightened men are similarly attracted by such heavenly opulence and the sense enjoyment from there. So it is not a good idea for anybody to look to go to these planets in the material world, the higher heavenly planets, no matter how much is talked about there. And it becomes a challenge for us to try to convince those who are in different religions that want to go to heaven, that actually heaven is not the place to go. Sometimes devotees use strategies like, all right, so you've heard about heaven, but there is actually a place higher than heaven. And that immediately, for some people, they say they don't believe it. And other people, they get very surprised. And those who get surprised, they want to know more. And so then the devotee then would have the opportunity to tell them about the spiritual world, life in the spiritual world, what little they know, at least the nature of the soul. Satchitananda, that alone says that. Eternality, eternality, knowledge, full knowledge, and constant happiness at the highest level. And that's called bliss. Whereas that you will not find in the heavenly planets. You will find material opulence. That you will find. And so the satisfaction that comes with that, that's there. You're going to find that. But on top of that, there are situations like rivalry, like envy, that's also in the heavenly planets. And therefore, life is not totally, totally peaceful. That's not there. Only in the spiritual world you have that. But even here in the material world, the mind can also be peaceful when it understands three things. Bhoktaram yagya pasam, that the Lord is a benefactor of all activities involving sacrifice and austerities. Sarva lokam mahesharam. The devotee understands that the Lord is the proprietor of all planets, spiritual and material. Suhidam Sarvabhutanam, that the Lord is the best well-wisher, well-wishing friend for all living entities. Hmm? Now, that person who understands that, and the sages, they are peaceful. Hmm? And they don't get too disturbed by the pangs of material life or material miseries. It doesn't bother them. They know it comes and it goes. Hmm? So whatever is happening, they don't put their hearts behind it and have anxiety and so on. As some people call it panic attacks and well, all the things that are there, people describe. It doesn't happen to those. Bhaktaram ya geta pasam sava lokamahisharam suhidam savabhutanam. Those three, you know, then Yatmamam Shantim Richati. That person is in fact a peaceful person. So peace formula is already given. In the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 5, text 29. It's there. And if we take that seriously, then our lives would be according to what the Bhagavad Gita says it would be. It would be peaceful. Mm. So around us, things won't bother us so much. Mentally and from our hearts, we are at peace. So essential activities are what take place in the heavenly planets. So much essential activities. But where does that wind up? People being with the opposite gender, associating with them, and profuse supply of wine. It's called the Somaras wine. And then what happens? We have to leave. And sometimes you may be unfortunate to be there where the demons fight the demigods. Somebody has done something as a demigod that is negative, and the repercussions from that is the demons become stronger. They attack the heavenly planets. The demigods themselves have to run, and now the heavenly planets becomes a miserable place, controlled by demons. The demons don't make anybody happy. When demons are in control, people are generally not happy. They are confused. Some are scared. So for periods of time, that happens in the heavenly planets too, but never in the spiritual world. And that's why it is the best place to be. And of everywhere in the spiritual world, Golok Vrindavan especially is the most wonderful place. So we've got a chance now to go by the spiritual activities, especially the chanting of the holy name, being actually reduced to 16 rounds minimum when the Vaishnava is supposed to chant 64 rounds a day. It's been cut to 1/4 of it. So we really don't have any excuse. We should put in the time, even if it takes us 2 hours to chant. It's 2 hours out of 24 hours that we're given in a day. 24 hours. 2 hours for Krishna is not really asking, but it's only 1/12. 8%, just over 8% of our time. It's not even 10%. So we don't have an excuse. And when we chant and we chant attentively, we become happy inside immediately. Happy, peaceful. And then we see the effect of the Lord in our day-to-day activities. The magic of the Lord does in fact come. It helps us. The magic of the Lord. Magic, we say magic, my Guru Maharaj coined the term Krishna magic because things happen that we don't even expect. We didn't know it would go that way. We weren't thinking about it that way. But it happens anyway. Why? Because the Lord is in the heart of all devotees and all living entities. And therefore, he can, in fact, direct the intelligence of people around us to our advantage, more so than we can think about how to handle our even material day. So that way, then things are happening around us more than we could ourselves figure out what to do. And that becomes you see the special hand of the Lord, in our lives. And then that alone makes us happy and satisfied. So that opportunity is there. It's just a question of connecting with it. Lord Brahma is telling us, connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He studied the Vedas. The Vedas was actually given to him by Krishna, but then he also studied it and studied it again and studied it again a third time. Hmm? And this conclusion is be attracted to the Lord because that is the highest perfection of religion. So that is our message for today. Do everything that we can, to be convinced that life is to be attracted to the Supreme Personality of Godhead and therefore doing what He's asked us to do based on what the Shastra and the spiritual master dictate. Mm. Then we will, in fact, be at the highest perfection of religion and will be happy and go back to Godhead also. Shila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much for allowing me to do the service. So there's reason to smile. There's reason to be happy inside because we have now been told what it is that we have to do. We just have to take it seriously, and life will actually be quite even. We are here, and even though while we're here in material life, in the material world, life will still be like we're not even in the material world at all mentally. We will be liberated. Hare Krishna. So anyone who has comments, please unmute yourself. And and okay, go ahead, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisance, Soga Shishur Prabhupada. Sorry
Right,
for
go
joining
to
the class
Prabhupada.
that I had to finish a class with Chandramali Swami, but this is a very interesting verse because Shri Prabhupada says that Lord Brahma read the Vedas 3 times. And then he said in a sentence, as generally done by all scholars.
Mm.
So which means reading something 3 times is a general what's the word?
Activity by scholars.
Activity, not behavior, but that they do that 3 times. And I was thinking to myself, how many of us have even finished reading the proper Lilamrita 1 time, right? And if those of us that have finished it, we should go back and do it 2 more times. Any book, I mean, any of Prabhupada's books, because, and then I was remembering how Antama Prabhu and Balabhadra Prabhu were, once a while when we talk, they say, I'm rereading the Lalamrita, I'm rereading the Lalamrita, and I'm thinking to myself, but Prabhu, you already read it. Now I see why, because your Prabhupada says in the purport that Lord Brahma, who is the highest, what's the word he used in his verse? The highest Vedic authority, said that he read the Vedas 3 times as generally done by all scholars. So then should we not be following that footsteps, or is that asking too much? Or I mean,
Absolutely.
or would that be mimicking?
No, we have to read and read and read over and over and over again. Because every time we read, what happens to the bodies is when we read a scriptural book, the realizations that come would be at a certain level. If we apply it in our lives, then we grow spiritually. If we read the book again, the same book and the comments from it will give us another set of realizations higher than what we got first. If we read again, we will in fact get more realizations. Not to mention the fact that sometimes we forget things, and if we read again, we tend to remember some things that we may have forgotten the earlier time that we read. So yes, reading as many times as possible. Of course, this is actually a policy in ISKCON. Srimad Bhagavatam is continuous. You go all the way to the end of Srimad Bhagavatam in the temple, it takes some years, and then they start again. Canto 1, chapter 1, text 1. Again, Janmadhyasya Sayata, again. And read and explain more, and explain more, and explain more. So even if we read on our own, the best is actually to read an assembly of devotees and have a discussion about it. That's what the pure devotees of the Lord, they do. Machita makta prana bharayanta parasparam katayantas nityam tushanti charumanticha. They actually get themselves very, very excited about Krishna consciousness when they discuss it among themselves, or when one person preaches and another one is listening. So the rest are listening. Therefore, in this setting where the scriptures are read and where people are hearing different connections that the speaker is making to the sentences that are in the scriptures, then we can make our own connection of the dots too in our own personal life and see how that benefits us. So all the ways are very, very, very important to do. But Lord Brahma was making the statement for us or doing an activity for us to actually tell us the importance of having to read over and over and over again because more realizations will come. Thank you for the question. Hare Krishna. Any other person that wants to ask? Don't see anybody unmuted themselves yet, but
Can I ask another question?
yes, please.
What is the danger of Prabhupada used the word in this purport, the word scrutinizingly. And I think he mentioned it once I see, yeah, one time. What does the term actually mean scrutinizingly, and what is the danger for reading on our own and not understanding from, because we were told to read in a group of devotees, get their feedback, get proper instruction, proper understanding, against reading and thinking that we figured out what Prabhupada was trying to say. What is the, the danger?
Well, first you ask about scrutinizingly. So scrutinizingly reading, it's like studying a textbook for a test. That's the closest analogy that I can give to the scrutinized reading, a scrutinizing type of reading. In other words, the others is you're just reading over, gleaning over it. The word used is gleaning over. If you remember, fine. If you don't remember, fine. But if you have to take a test, then whatever you're reading, you want to know it in detail. You want to know everything about it. You want to be able to even repeat that thing without looking at the textbook or where you're reading from. That's scrutinizing reading. On the second part of scrutinizing, also that what does it mean? This is for scriptures in particular. What does it mean? What does it mean in my life? So the application to our lives that also comes from scrutinizing, reading from scrutiny when we're reading. Now, how does it apply to our lives? That part of it is why reading when there's discussion among the devotees becomes very valuable. Because you can only think about things that apply in your life, but when devotees have discussions, they would also bring other examples that we may not have thought of that actually connect to what's being spoken. And that gives more of a bigger, or you get a bigger picture about that particular topic that's being discussed in that section of the scriptures. We can definitely read. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't read on our own. The other thing we can do is that if we read and we have any kind of misunderstanding or some things doesn't hit us right, we don't know what it means, we can always connect with a senior devotee and ask, I was reading from this particular section here, this is what it says. What does that mean? Then you get help from that particular person to have a better understanding. So that's also there. But yeah, the beauty of it is the association. When scriptures are being read, association when the devotees are around, that gives a special flavor, practically, to how the scriptures come across to us. But yes, it's important to read in a very, very scrutinizing way, wanting to know everything there, what it connects to, what it means in my life. There's some things that's happened in the past that connect to this. What is Krishna pointing out to me? All those kind of questions, when they are answered, then that is scrutiny in the reading process. Hare Krishna. Okay. Anyone else like to ask a question? Just unmute
Hare
yourself.
Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
I also joined a little late. Nice discussion. Just I was thinking on the point, Brahma was inquisitive or wanted to know about the Lord. That's why he scrutinizingly studied the scripture 3 times and he realized the truth. But there are some people, they are not interested to know about the truth, or they are not inquisitive. How we can help, how we can deal that kind of situation?
Well, you yourself and me and one other people were at the basement of the temple last Sunday, where there was somebody that came with this, idea, young man that came with his ideas. One thing, he said he was an agnostic, but agnostic, if you look in the dictionary, it has a different meaning from how the conversation wound up becoming. But um, we can lead, we can help others, by explaining things to them as best as our own realizations, take us to. That's there, and I'll just answer kind of broadly because now that I think about this young man, um, many of the things that we threw at him, if he was actually open-minded, he would have accepted it. But there are some people who are closed-minded. And so, you know, in the end, it seemed like we got nowhere with them. But we got nowhere with them. But still, there will be some things. Now, let's talk about another situation. And this was at one of those, like an open day in some function, where a lot of people come, like a fair kind of thing in Mechanicsburg.
Mhm.
There were also people that came. They were definitely Christians, so this is a different situation. Mhm. Different situation because they had their Christian beliefs. They came and they also brought, their Christianity and tried to. So you meet all kinds of people. Mhm. So they were talking about God from their understanding, but they really had no knowledge of the soul. So again, we brought up some arguments from Bhagavad Gita, and then later on explained what um, the soul, hmm, the nature of a soul, the size of the soul, the location of a soul, how the soul connects to birth, what happens to the soul at death, and all of that they explained. And as we were explaining, we were pointing to the Bhagavad Gita. Now, these are Christians, but they had their Bibles with them. Hmm? We're pointing to the Bhagavad Gita. All the answers are in here. Hmm? I was just telling you a little bit about it, but it's the broader explanation. It's in there in the Shastra. So in the end, there were four of them that came, four men, four young men, and one of them asked for Bhagavad Gita to take with them because he was curious to know more about the soul. Hmm. So that's the advantage. So even if we talk to somebody that it seems like they haven't heard or they argue, but still, because it was a debate, there will be some things that will, in fact, stay in the mind of that person. And by the mercy of the Lord, at some point, they will see something, Krishna will reveal something to them to make a connection. And then at that point, they will be more open to Krishna consciousness. Now, for people like that, what can we do? Well, you can have a discussion with them if it doesn't go anywhere. Remember, our ninth offense of the 10 offenses is to preach to faithless persons about the glories of the Lord. So we can only go at some point, and then you don't worry about it anymore. But if the person has had prashadam, then they had the mercy of the Lord. So then that will translate to two things. One, they will have a human body next life, which is very advantageous because the non-human bodies, we can't understand Krishna. And second, their Krishna consciousness will be actually started at some point in their lives. It will be. It's not for us to do. It's Prashadam that works like that. So anyone that is connected with somebody or meets them, even if they're not related to them, and that person is having all kinds of difficulty accepting God for who He is. If you give them Prashadam, you've actually given them the next best thing if they don't believe in Krishna. the next best thing. So either way, we can actually help people to
Right.
grow. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Actually, that brought me now. When we go out, I haven't been, hit with this question before, but now, yeah, the other belief people, major like Christian people, comes and their first commandment is there is no God above me or beyond me. I think that's their first commandment.
First
So how
commandment
do
is I am the Lord thy God. Don't have any other strange gods before me.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
how it's put.
no other God before me.
Yeah.
So when they, yeah, usually we don't engage them, and
Mm-hmm.
I sometimes tactically, I try to end with a very good impression, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes how we can uh, have the conversion out, because they're saying that, hey, you are bringing another god, and my god says that there is no god above me. So how do you deal with
Yes.
it?
How do you deal with that? Okay. There was one situation. I'll relate the situation that happened at Gideonagri. There was one professor that was, I think he's a religion professor. I never really talked to him to find out what subject he taught. But one thing he was doing every semester, he was bringing a busload of his students to Gideonagri.
Mm.
And Gideonagri's devotees there. So he wanted them to have a short, for a short while, an experience of being at the farm, and then things explained to them. Of course, farm life, yes, it is farm life, but if the devotee is explaining farm life, you're going to hear about Krishna, which is always the case. You come in the temple room, and whoever describes it to them. One day I was there. I wasn't the one behind the microphone. I was just standing in the back, and these students were listening. And the question time came, and they asked for more explanation. Then they were the same thing like you mentioned. Our God is like this, your God. So our God is back and forth. Your God, our God, your God. And obviously I know that it's the same God they're talking about. So the way we answered it is that and many of them were, I could tell from what they were saying, they were also of a Christian background. So I talked to them about Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve had everything that they could ever want for them in one garden that God put them in.
So
Adam and
Adam
Eve.
and Eve are the devotees of the Jesus.
Yeah, well, this is even before Jesus in the Old Testament. So Jesus in the New Testament. This is the Old Testament. So let me just hear me out
Yeah,
go to the
yeah, sure.
start.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So Adam and Eve were put in this garden. They didn't have to do. Adam didn't raise a finger. Everything was there provided for them to live a wonderful life. Other living entities were there too, and they had one instruction: exception. You can have everything else except one particular fruit of one particular tree. That they shouldn't take that. And it goes on to say that the serpent came to Eve and said that God has deliberately told you not to take from this tree, the fruit from this tree, because if you do, a lot of things will be exposed to you. You will be like God yourself. Just
Mm.
paraphrase it. So when Eve heard that, then she took of the tree. Oh, I can be like God. Then she ate some and fruit of the tree. And then she took it to Adam and explained what the serpent had said, even though they had been deceived. And Adam also took of the tree, the fruit of the tree. And the Lord became angry with them and banned them. So that's the way they know about it in Christianity. But I said, the point is, why was it that Adam and Eve have been put in this easy situation of living in this Garden of Eden with just one exception that they have to be aware of? And they're going to break that exception. They wanted to be at the level of God. That's what they were told. So there will be God himself after eating the tree, according to what the serpent said. There will be Adam God, and there will be Eve God. There will be three gods. Why? So then I explained that It's because Eve and Adam, they were envious of the Lord. He had given them everything. If they hadn't eaten of the tree, they'd still be enjoying. But they did because the reason was to get to the same level as God Himself. Does it sound familiar? We want to be at the same level. We want to be our controllers also. So when we explain like that, I said, yeah, that's the way it is. So it was through envy that God kicked them out and put them in this particular earth that we're on. So it is the same thing with us also. Hmm? You have the Adam and Eve story, and we have in the shorter one that we were envious of the Lord. So everybody that's come here was envious of the Lord in their own way, like the Adam and Eve story for them.
Yes,
So
to
that's the approach
avoid.
that we make to explain to them.
Yes, so to avoid this kind of situation, that first commandment had been put in there so that people should not go to the God's level and be envious with the God. That's the reason He said, Lord Jesus has put in that there is no God above me.
It doesn't say that there's no God above me. He says, I'm the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have any other strange gods before me. In other
Before
words,
me.
don't go to any other strange gods other than me. I am the Lord thy God. Now, this means people who make all kinds of statues, or even people who worship demonic people or demonic entities and so on. Don't that was the
Yeah.
understanding underneath that.
That I
Yeah.
know. But
Mhm.
how we see them in they may say that, hey, you come up with something else which Jesus has forbidden.
Okay, that's why I talked about the Adam and Eve story, because they know about the Adam and Eve story. And if the Adam and Eve story is the same reason, to give them a story that they can relate to, and we also can relate to. And so when we explain that way, that tells you that the God that they are talking about is the same God, because it's through the same or similar kind of circumstance that man has wound up here in this earth. So our God can't be different from your God. So I use this story because otherwise, how else can you? They're going to think that, oh, Krishna is not the Lord. But if in their own Old Testament, they have this story, and the reason for us being here, the underlying reason about the Adam and Eve story, it's the same thing. It's envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anyway, at the time we talked about it in Gitanagri, they understood it that way, because there's no, if you have gotten a story, if we have gotten a story of how we came here, it's through envy, and they also have been born through a situation through Adam and Eve, which also has to do with envy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then from that conclusion, we'll say that the God we have here is the same God that we're talking about, that they
Yeah.
discuss in the Old Testament also.
You
That's
can,
how we
you can,
concluded it.
there are other names of the God, or there are other God personalities, as long as they are not envious, like how the Adam Eve turned into be envious to the God. As long as they are not envious, it's okay to have the no issue to having other gods. Can we explain like that way?
I don't know that they couldn't fight you on that point. I wouldn't explain that way though. I wouldn't explain that way,
Okay.
because they could say, well, there are other gods, and I've not been envious of them, but they are not the same God as. And they can say that because they are
Okay.
other gods. They are. We just call them demigods, but they are other gods who don't have the same situation, because we don't get
Right.
envious of demigods. So
Right.
so
Right.
the Adam and Eve story, that's more effective for them. Hare Krishna.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay.
though.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. Yeah. Thank you
Hare
for.
Krishna. Yeah. Any other
There's
questions?
one thing I wanted to add is Bhakti Swami says that if people have a difficulty understanding, accepting, that there is God, except that have challenged reading or anything. He says the best weapon is prasadam.
Oh
Right.
yeah, when they
If
wouldn't believe
all
anything, yeah,
fails, just
yeah,
give them prasadam, because when you
exactly.
give them prasadam, there is hope that next life they will come back and they'll pick up where they left off. So
Yeah,
just sharing what Bhakti Swami said.
yeah, that's important. We talked about it earlier,
Right. Right.
in a situation in a temple. So you just make sure, Mataji is giving him prashadam, because that's Lokanath Swami said prashadam is Krishna's secret weapon. We use we use that will change the mind over time, because that's the mercy of the Lord, and the mercy always works. The Lord, when that would happen, we don't have control over it. When that person would turn to Krishna, we don't have control over it. But what we can do is to give prashadam based on the culture, what they like. Hmm? But that also happened in Gitanagara. The same group that came, they were given prashadam. Where they had rice, they had dal. Some of them had never tasted Indian food, and they were just used to burgers and those kind of things. So most of them wasted the prashadam. But the next day, cookies and drinks were made from the following year when they came, and they ate that. But that was also, nectar and homemade cookies, and they made pizza also for them. So
Mm.
yeah, so the culture is also important. It should be taken into consideration when we're giving out prasad. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
I want to share a quick pastime that I was just remembering the power of prasadam. One time when Prabhupada was on the plane, because Prabhupada eats whatever the devotee is given,
Oh
uh,
yeah, I remember the story. Go
and he
ahead. Yeah.
eats whenever, even when the plane is taking off, he'll eat. Even the time to put away, he won't listen. He'll eat because he was so time conscious. But at one point, there was a flight attendant who was very
Mm-hmm.
curious to actually, taste what Prabhupada was having. So Prabhupada gave her a piece of whatever, what chuda,
The
yeah,
prashadam. Yeah.
yeah, and this was like in the 70s, and 20 years later, she found the ISKCON temple, and she was practicing by herself, just by
Yeah.
taking that mercy of prasadam from Sri Prabhupada. 20 years later, she started practicing by herself. So
Wonderful.
20 years later, so even though they may not get it now, but as long as they got the mercy, just the prasadam, 10, 20, 30 years, they'll come back. And of course, it all depends on the person's, what's the word, sukriti, that they have built up, the
Yeah.
pious credits,
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So one has to build up the pious credits to want to do that. And once they build up the pious credits, then Krishna will make the arrangement for them to
Mm.
come back, and maybe
Yeah.
10, 20, 30 years later. And so this person just took Maha from Prabhupada, and 20 years later,
Yeah.
he started
As a flight
practicing.
attendant. Do you mind if I just share a little bit of how they came to Krishna consciousness then?
Yes, yes,
Because that
please. I
part,
would like to
okay.
hear it.
So after this question, he was just curious about what Papa was eating, so Papa gave him peace. And this again, it was about 20 years later. Devotees were doing book distribution, going door to door. That's how it happened. Going door to door. So they knocked at her. They didn't know who she was. They just knocked at the door. And this, because obviously she's older then, she's gotten older. She invited them in. She invited them in, and then they saw some of paraphernalia belonging to in the Krishna consciousness, because he was worshiping Krishna at that time. And then she told them the story of how she was a flight attendant and how she met, she's buying the shit up part on the plane, and how, they turned. So that's how the story came out. But it was two book distribution that the devotees, Krishna arranged for them to go to
Yeah.
the residence at that
And
time. Yeah.
yeah, she had Maha from Prabhupada. 20 years later, the devotees came at her door. She was older, and
Mm,
then she was practicing. So Mahaprasadam is very powerful. Prasadam
yeah.
is very powerful. It either
So
happens in this life or next life, but it'll definitely
yeah.
happen.
So never give up, whether you're related to somebody or not. It is not, they have a block based on their own karma from connecting with Krishna. What opens the door is Prasadam. That we have to make sure we get though. Hmm. Then, and then let it go. And, books may work, they may read, they may not read, but Prasadam they like, and if they eat it, they have Krishna. It's only a matter of time that heart will open. Hare Krishna. Thank you for the discussion. Any other comments or questions before we wrap up? If not, then thank you very much for coming for this class and have a nice rest of your day in a Krishna conscious way. Panchakalpatarubhishcha kripasundhave eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Glory to Srila Prabhupada.